What cup do you have there?
This is my sister's. It says boy bye.
Boy, bye. Okay, I got Les Miserables, one of my favorite performance plays and movies.
Oh, so cool. It's a really nice cup.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we begin, and we're going to be talking about self-acceptance today,
Yeah.
we have three other beings joining our call today
Okay.
because I'm on the balcony. Do you want to see them?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
One
so
are
you can see I'm kind of here. And
who am I looking at? Oh, oh my goodness. It's a bird.
there's three of them there.
I saw one head in the beak. It's just a little dark. That's why. Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Oh my goodness. They're so cute. What kind of bird is that?
Doves. Yeah, they hang out.
Oh, they're doves.
They hang out behind me on the balcony. They just chill there. When we're having meals and stuff, they're just always there.
They're
We've had
gorgeous.
this going on for years now, that like every year doves will nest in our flower pot on our balcony and just hang out.
I was going to say they look super comfortable, like it's their couch.
Yeah, they're used to me. I
Wow.
think that one was probably a baby and of another dove that raised her here and everything else. So yeah.
Wow. Well, welcome to our chat.
Yeah. Group chat today. Okay, so we're going to be talking about self-acceptance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a bunch of stuff, and I want you to just help me through this process of editing and sort of editing and refining the self-acceptance chat. Okay, do you think you could do that as a favor for me?
100%.
Help me see like opportunities to get better and everything else, so I can eventually finalize this topic and make it official and just see how things go, because I really appreciate that you just helped me out with this one, and totally
Always.
appreciate it. Okay, now there's a couple complementary subjects that go along well with this. One is the concept of learning to forgive yourself, learning to honor those parts of yourself that you might be resenting because of recognizing how they serve you. So I call that the shadow. And then being able to reconcile the harsh judgmental voice inside. So those are kind of like three different topics I may coach separately that complement this. So our purpose here is to just really stop being a critic towards yourself, like try to stop avoiding things because of lack of self-acceptance. You know, when you accept yourself just the way you are, you change. And it's so central to our reality, our ability to accept ourselves, and it plays into everything we do. And we want to be able to develop a happy, loving, and respectful relationship with yourself, giving yourself the love and respect you seek from others, right? Yeah. And to heal self-loathing and its side effects. And the side effects of self-loathing can be addiction, depression, bad relationships, you know. And if we doubt our own worth, we'll be afraid to trust others who feel we're worthy, because we won't feel they're being authentic, and we'll trust people who project a worth of us that is on par with what we feel. And that's how we end up in bad relationships, because we feel like, well, this is the only real person because they treat me like garbage, and that's what I actually am. So they're the only ones who were. So, and this all happens unconsciously. So that's when you see people who are like, oh my gosh, they always end up in such toxic relationships. And it's because they feel like that's the only place they can connect, because that person's seeing them the way they see themselves, right?
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
And we want to be able to give ourselves freedom to have fun. You know, like that's another part. Give yourself permission to do things you enjoy and explore your curiosity and be at peace with your inner self, so you can be at peace with everybody. Because if you love yourself first, you'll have energy to love everyone else around you. So that's kind of going to be our topic here today. Okay.
Love that.
So, what we're going to do here is, why don't we just do like a quick self-assessment? Okay.
Sure.
This is for anyone who's watching this as well. And the self-assessment, I want you to score everything from 1 to 5. 1 means almost never. 2 means you do this occasionally. 3 means you do it about half the time. 4 means you do it fairly often. And 5 means you do this almost always. Okay. So question 1 is this. I try to be understanding and patient towards those aspects of my personality that I don't like.
3.
Yes. So, and once again, if somebody's watching along, you would just score that. I try to be understanding and patient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. 1 is almost never, 2 occasionally, 3 about half the time, 4 fairly often, 5 almost always.
You want me to
Okay.
say it out loud or just write it?
You can say out loud and just hypothetically, and we'll just know that whatever you're saying is not necessarily you. You're just pretending to be a practice client, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, the next question is, when I'm going through a very hard time, I give myself the caring and tenderness I need.
I would say 4.
Okay, good. Yeah, because sometimes people are really hard on themselves and they beat themselves up, and it might be a 1 or 2 if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
And that's a question on self-kindness. Question 3 is, when I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. That most people experience these feelings.
Yeah, I would say 4 again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be a 1 or 2 if people think that they've got it much harder than the general population. So, which is a perspective that may be more disempowering.
For sure.
Okay, question 4 is, when things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through.
5.
Okay, great. Great. Yeah, and if we feel like we've got it worse than anybody else, once again, the score might be a 1 or a 2. Okay, question 5 is, when I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness.
I would say 3.
Okay. And then question 6 is, when I fail at something important to me, I try to keep things in perspective.
4.
Okay, good. And, for some people, there might be like an immediate letdown or feel like there's doom coming. Okay, so those questions will give a score. This is applied from the work of Kristen Neff. She does a lot of work on self-compassion, that assessment there. But it's great because your total score can give us a memorable or a measurable benchmark on where you're at with self-acceptance. And we can retest in future to see how far you've come after you've applied a lot of the methodology we're discussing. Okay, so what I like about this is it's something tangible, not ambiguous, because clarity brings power. So I like to have something measurable on this subject in particular. Okay, so let's go into, here's how I look at it. Self-acceptance and a challenge with self-acceptance usually means that we're not clear on what we stand for in life. We're not clear on the values we represent. And so we might indulge and pledge our allegiance to values and ways of acting and thinking that betray our higher purpose for us, right? Like, we may value relationships and think it's a good idea to be nice to everybody, but then we yell at people and we get mad at people or we insult them. And then so we have difficulty accepting ourselves because deep down, we're reflecting values that we don't truly believe in.
Right. It's contradicting.
Yeah. So I think a lot of self-acceptance comes down to that. It's like you keep playing for the wrong team, right? It's like, no, wait, you don't want to be here for selfishness. You don't want to be here for moody. You don't want to play on team bad moods or team rebellious spirit, or, you want to be playing for the virtues, not the vices. And so a lot of self-acceptance comes down to, like, I don't really like the fact I keep playing for the wrong guys here. Like, I keep acting in ways that I don't think are good because I'm just not clear on these things, right?
Of course.
Even being hard on ourselves is not good, because you can often put it just makes things worse and puts an unfair standard on things. But what I want to do first is we want to convince ourselves that some of these actions that challenge our self-acceptance, we want to convince ourselves that some of these actions are a bad idea. so that we stop doing them. Okay. So one, how does being hard on yourself betray your highest principles? If you're really too hard on yourself, like how does that just make things worse? What are your thoughts?
I think it just like taints your strength. So like, I mean, if you're super hard on yourself and that's kind of like where you're focusing, maybe you're not interacting with others the same way.
Yes, you become disconnected to other people, and you probably live to connect with other people. And,
Right.
Beating yourself up blocks that. So that's where we have this conflict, and it's hard to accept what we're being in the moment. Right.
Right.
And I think that, one of the things I once heard Swami Kriyananda say was that, the more important the painting, the longer the time and the greater effort required to carry it through to perfection. Right. So we're almost like that painting that's in progress, and you can't judge too soon. A human life is so short to be able to figure all these things out. So we should be realistic on the timelines we're imposing on ourselves.
I think realistic is huge. Huge. Yeah.
Also, when you're hard on yourself, what you do is those people, especially the little people that look up to you, they see you do it and they think that's what they're supposed to do. So if you indulge in self-loathing or being like, oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a stupid, whatever, then they start to pick that up and you pass that on to them. You pass the pain on to them, because the best way to lead is through example, especially with like kids. So if you indulge in these kinds of behaviors, you're spreading it. And, the limit of your self-abuse is exactly the limit that you will tolerate from someone else. According to Don Miguel Ruiz, he said that in the book, The Four Agreements. So if we're hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up, we will accept other people who are hard on us and beat us up, because we've put our standard there, right? So what we want to do is, like, sometimes people think that it's helpful to beat yourself up, that it gets you motivated and focused. All I'm going to say is that, is there a better way to do it that's more sustainable to motivate yourself, right? Maybe to use love instead of self-loathing as a motive, because you'll get better mileage out of it. You won't burn yourself out and destroy yourself and get, so we want to just be able to convince ourselves that this is not helpful behavior, because a part of us, if it still thinks it's a good idea, we'll keep going back to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the reasons for challenges with self-acceptance is that everybody kind of views themselves as a finished product. Like, here I am, I shouldn't be like this right now. I shouldn't this, I shouldn't that. But why should we view ourselves as a work in progress instead of viewing ourselves as a finished product?
Because if you view yourself as a finished product, there's no room for error and experimenting. It's kind of just like you're dull in that sense. If you viewed yourself as a work in progress, like, there's room for error, and that's kind of like what life is all about. That's how we adapt and progress, right? So I think that would just hold you back.
Yeah, instead of judging who we are in the moment, we should be happy about who we are becoming, right? So who we are from moment to moment changes. We've got the kind version of you, the lazy version of you, the happy, blissful version of you. Like, there's so many different yous, right? And I think one of the things is, we all have infinite expressions of the potential inside us, and there's not enough time in a human life to be able to realize all of our high potential. You could learn probably every language in the world if you wanted to, if you had the time and devotion to it, but there isn't enough time. You could learn every sport if you applied yourself, but there isn't enough time. You could read every book in the world and learn from it, but there isn't enough time. You could learn every skill and master all these skills, but there isn't enough time. Like learn every musical instrument, right? You have so much more potential than you can ever actualize in a human life. Right? So it's like we are all a healthier way to look at this, because a lot of times people are judging themselves in the moment.
Right.
We are a work in progress with high potential. We are a work in progress with high potential. You know, what matters is the future you. Be happy about who you're becoming. Even all of those failures and suffering actually gives you wisdom and perspective as you move forward. So all the bad stuff actually serves you moving forward so that you can be more intelligent and intentional with future life decisions. So as long as you're paying attention to the outcomes you're getting in life, then intellectually you're making progress in your understanding. So
what would you say, like, I mean, this is just me, just out of curiosity, and maybe other people would relate to it anyway, is kind of like, how would you remind yourself to be like realistic in terms of your expectations? Because I feel like naturally, when we spoke even earlier, a lot of people, not naturally, but a lot of people are their own worst critic. And you hear that line a lot. How would you kind of hit reset on that in terms of your expectations?
It has to come down to acknowledging, it has to come down to humility. I'm not even qualified to judge myself.
Yeah.
I'm bad at judging. So many things in my life I judged to be good things and were terrible things. I thought so many things were a good idea and it was a bad idea. And then there were so many times there were things I thought were a bad idea, like maybe like investing in Bitcoin or something. And then it seemed like a good idea or whatever, right?
Right.
Like we just need to acknowledge that we're not really good at judging that stuff. Right?
That's true.
Because what's happening is we're really promoting ourselves to positions we're not qualified to do. We're not qualified to just say we're, so I think it comes back to humility.
Okay.
The more humble you are, the less likely you are to do that.
Okay. Fair.
All right. So the next one is, and that's a great question. Please bring up any and all questions like that. And I think really, like, if we're to come down to it, I think we can learn to love ourselves for the potential within us. Right? Like you have the potential to be 10 out of 10 loving. You have the potential to be 10 out of 10 forgiving. You have the potential to be 10 out of 10 generous. You have the potential to be 10 out of 10 compassionate. You should love yourself for having all this potential within you.
Right.
It'll come out in its own time, in its own way. This stuff will express, but that's what you should really be mindful of most in order to live the life that's going to inspire you most. Now, one of the things that I'd say, the third topic of discussion is, how do you have even more value because of your past? How is your past a strength and an asset? The reason I'm asking this is because a lot of people think because of their past, they're worth less. And they lower their self-image because of things in their past. And what I'm actually saying is that, no, how do you have even more value because of those experiences? Because if you take this perspective, you're just going to make things worse. You're going to betray your own happiness and you're going to betray your own higher objectives here, right?
Right.
So what are your thoughts? How do you have even more value because of your past and because of all the negative stuff in the past? How does that make you even more valuable?
I would say just wisdom and relatability with others.
Yeah. Greater ability to help people going through the same stuff. You have insight and experience that can help you help other people. It is a strength, not a weakness. You have credibility, relatability, and also, like, all of your choices were intended to ease suffering and maximize happiness. I mean, isn't that what everybody wants? You did the best you could with what you knew. And if you had known a better way at the time, you would have acted different. Accept that these are all just experiments in a journey of figuring it out, right? They are learning experiences that help you be wiser, and they're necessary. You can't go onto a golf course and get a hole in one on every hole and then beat yourself up if you don't.
Right.
Sometimes you have to miss those shots, recalibrate, reset, take your next best shot. Guess what? You might miss again. Recalibrate, reset, take your next best shot. The key is to keep playing and learning from your outcomes. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I also think, that Paramahansa Yogananda once said in Where There Is Light, he once said that, a diamond less valuable because it's covered with mud?
Yeah.
Because there's a changeless beauty to your soul. You are not your mistakes. Right? That's just the mud. So we want to hold on to what you actually are. These are patterns we've experimented with, different behavior patterns and thought patterns, and we can always just keep switching them out till we find the ones that suit us. And so we shouldn't judge ourselves on past experiments. They're experiments. If it didn't work out, great. That's a good experiment. An experiment that doesn't give you the result you were looking for is a good experiment because it shows you what doesn't work. That's a success. They still publish those in scientific journals. So we should honor those experiments in our life that didn't work out because there's a lot to learn from them.
Yeah. Even from just like you discussing now, it just, in terms of self-acceptance, it really comes down to perspective.
Yes, you nailed it. Oh, wow. Mouse drop.
Not coffee drop because we like it too much.
Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that?
It's
or what?
oh my God, they are so cute.
Well, they I see them every day. They change. It's so cute. And
they change positions, like who's where.
No, they tend to be, and sometimes the mom will just like hang out right here. And she's like, she's really comfortable with us, actually. It's really fun.
They're
We'll
quiet.
have dinner out here, and she'll just, like, the whole family's staring at us, and they'll be swinging around in the basket if there's a little wind. It's kind of like, look at them, they're on their fun ride together, and they're just so quiet, and they're all just blinking at us.
Oh my God.
So one of the things is, I think, has anyone ever lived a perfect life? I think, we need to, if so, not many, but we need to give ourselves permission to be human. Right? It's a very, we need to give ourselves permission to be human. People don't know what they don't know when they're judging themselves. It's like, no, that's not based on reality. That's not a realistic judgment. So,
those messages, those like when you're on the beach and there's like the airplane and they usually have like they'll have like a sign promoting something. I think permission to be human should be on that.
That's such a good idea.
Pretty sweet. Like, come on, reminder everybody, you have permission to be human. Anyway.
Exactly. And I think everything in future will improve if you're really making that spiritual effort of understanding everything that's going on, and everything in future should improve, right?
Yeah.
So why should we, question 4, I would say is, why should we respect and celebrate our imperfections, quirks, flaws, and mistakes? Like, how are some of your biggest weaknesses actually an asset or a strength?
Well, I would say it shows you the contrast, right? You're getting contrast so you can see what that other attribute is or what that other side is. It gives you direction a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all those things make us relatable. The fact that we aren't perfect.
Of course.
If you were perfect, you'd have a lot of people hate you. They'd have envy. They'd be like, no, Monica's too perfect. I'm not listening. I hate Monica. Everything goes good for Monica. Like, like you can't actually relate to people unless you've got mistakes. You can inspire them on what's possible for them through your example if you also make mistakes. If you live a perfect human life, people will think that your success level and example is unattainable because of your perfection. But if you can role model, hey, I've made mistakes like you've made mistakes. I've been confused just like you've been confused. And here's where I'm at now. Then people are like, well, then if you can do it, I can do it. And that is all about being able to help other people And what brings us more happiness and fulfillment than finding our happiness in others and making a positive impression, sharing our love and wisdom with others? It's almost like a requirement. You need to have mistakes and imperfections to do it effectively.
Prerequisites.
Yeah. If that's one of your higher values, you want to be able to help other people and have a positive impact on those you care about, you're going to need flaws. You're going to need mistakes. You're going to need imperfections, because people aren't going to be able to take you seriously otherwise.
Right.
Because you're too unrealistic. You're setting an unrealistic standard.
It's very true.
Right. So and also, these things make us unique. They make us unique. It's kind of like, there was this one person, and they had, I think it was I'm trying to remember, it had to do with something when they were born. I don't know whether it was the forceps on their face or something like that, but there was some sort of challenge when they were born, and it kind of affected their lip. And so they kind of talked with a bit of a slur, and they said, I want to be a famous actor. And the mom's like, please, no, anything but that. Like, you have a flaw, you have a mistake, and you can't hide it. Like, this is so stressful. Like, the mom was kind of thinking like, no, you to do that, you need to be pretty close to perfect. But what happened was this like flaw with the lip ended up being like a signature trademark for Sylvester Stallone. We know him kind of because of that. It's
Right.
endearing about him. Like, this is one of the things that makes him lovable, is that he's unique and he's owning it. He's owning his identity. I love it. Right? I love what he's done there, because he's really role modeled self-acceptance in such a beautiful way for people, and said, you know what? I know I've got this thing, but I'm not going to let it hold me back. I'm going to do the best I can with what I got. And because he wasn't perfect, he had that attitude, it's so inspirational for people.
Because we love him.
people might think, well, I don't like my nose, or I don't like my hair, this or that. But then they might think, well, look, it is still possible to, chase after my dreams and goals and ambitions, right?
Of course. So
it's not about being perfect. It's about being perfectly you. That's when we really start winning in life. Right? We just have to stop acting and pretending like we're some sort of example of perfection here, and trying to portray that to the world with impression management, and just be authentic that we aren't perfect. Be honest with ourselves and love ourselves for that fact. Perfection's boring. Seriously. Like,
no, for sure.
And I think that, we all make mistakes because we're confused. Confusion is not a crime. We haven't been prepared to live a human life without flaws. It's like being an airplane pilot and trying to learn how to fly midair. People do bad things because they're getting confused with the controls on how to live a human life, and they hit turbulence and everything else. But I believe everyone seeks the higher good ultimately. They seek happiness for everybody and everything else, right? So, and within their model of life and reality, they're acting appropriately, and all expressions of the individual, I believe, are just an expression of love, even if in a distorted form. So a lot of those expressions of hate and stuff are really like a distortion of love. That's a difficult concept to grasp, so we'll just leave it there till another day.
Sure.
Okay. And here's what I want to ask you. How have you been a blessing to many, many people? Question 5. How have you been a blessing to many, many people? Let me ask you this. Have you done more kindness, big and small, for more people in your life than you could possibly remember?
Of course, yeah.
You have done more good for people, big and small, than you can possibly remember. But do those people remember your acts of kindness often?
Probably.
Yeah, those acts of kindness are embedded in their hearts and their minds. Things you've said, things you've done. Have you ever had a moment where somebody's like, you once said this to me and it really changed me and helped me out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't even remember this conversation. Like, this was 12 years ago? Like, what? Like, have you ever had a moment like that where somebody was like expressing gratitude for something you've done previously that you don't even remember?
Yeah. I'm like, when did I say that?
Yeah. And that's only on the rare moments where they actually bring it up again.
Right.
I brought up where a friend had helped me move. He helped me get a new refrigerator. A friend had brought his truck, came to my place. Okay. We picked up the refrigerator because I needed a new refrigerator. He helped me bring it up the stairs, which was like doing like massive deadlifts and like everything, because this thing was friggin' heavy, and put it in, everything else. He just did that, came out of the goodwill of his heart. And I brought it up to him the other day. I said, hey, you remember that time he did? He's like, I totally forgot about that. He's like, I think about that often when I see you. Like, I think about, here's a person that did like all heavy lifting, brought his truck, didn't expect anything in return, just came and helped me out. And I said, I think about that often. He's like, I totally forgot I did that for you. Because this was like, I don't know, 6 years ago, maybe. But that's an example. It's like, that was a big event. You dedicated a whole night to this, right? So but that goes to show that if you add up all the goodness you have contributed in life, all the lives you've touched in all the different ways, how many blessings have flowed to you and through you, you can't even measure the goodness you've contributed in this lifetime. And you're going to beat yourself up, and you're going to judge yourself and be harsh on yourself. That's why you're not qualified to judge, because you can't measure all the goodness there. You can't measure all the goodness. Your brain isn't reliable enough. You can't even remember it all. So that's why you're unqualified to negatively judge yourself. Right? So I think, you're important to other people. You deserve some respect. We all do. And just remember some of those times of generosity and caring, and that there's more times than you can even recall. Now, one of the things I think we need to be aware of is that there are some destructive ways that people justify loving themselves. So when I say, you should love yourself more, like some people think self-indulgence is a way of loving yourself, excessive unrestrained gratification of your appetite, desires, or whims. Be like, I'm going to love myself by eating a big bucket of ice cream in front of the TV, and and watching like reality TV or something else, whatever, right? And it's like, well, that's not really loving yourself. Like that is self-indulgence, which might not be the best care. Maybe every now and then, but a little bit is fine just to recharge.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line there.
Of course.
Some people think that self-pity is loving themselves. They think if you're self-absorbed in your own unhappiness and your own troubles, that's a way of loving and connecting to yourself. But it just reinforces an idea that you're weak and incapable of improving your situation. We don't want to indulge in that. That's actually not loving ourselves. That's actually weakening ourselves, right? So we don't want to confuse self-pity with self-love or passivity. Sometimes people think passivity is self-love, like just taking a break from everyone and everything. But compassion naturally leads to action. Like if a baby is hungry and crying, you're not just going to leave it, right? You're going to go over and feed it and take action.
Right.
And so if you love yourself, you're going to take action. That's what compassion should lead to, right? Not holding back from living a human life out of self-love. You should actually move forward, because then you're actually living your higher values. Some people think egotism is a way of loving themselves. They don't call it that. They don't think of it that way. But viewing themselves better than others is a way of loving and honoring yourself. And that's just going to steep you in delusion and perspectives that are going to actually betray you in the end, right? Being overly involved with your own needs at the expense of another's, that's not practicing self-compassion, right? We should have, the best way to love yourself is to have your self-concern and self-love with regard for everyone else around you, because if you aren't mindful of caring for everyone else around you, they're a part of your greater self. It will affect you. It will come back to you, right? So we want to be able to we want to be able to zoom out a little bit. So those are some things. Those are some things to be careful of when we're going into this territory. Now, we want to just identify if there's any obstacles for self-compassion, right? So here's what we want to think, we want to figure out what's your rule on adequacy. So what's your rule on adequacy? So fill in the blank. I'll be worthy if, or I'll be worthy when.
Let's say like, I don't know. I guess an example could be like someone might say, let's say a certain amount of money. We've talked about that before.
Mm-hmm.
How like chasing, let's say, I don't know, 100K salary, I'll be happy, or like once I hit that point.
Yeah.
That's
or if I hit 12% body fat.
Yes.
Or if I have a #1 song on the radio, or, sometimes people set these standards on worth and they're all outcome based.
Yeah.
It's better to just hinge your worth to your potential if you want to do yourself a favor, not your outcomes, because your outcomes are not always within your control. There's lots of ways for you to fail on those outcomes, but only a few ways to succeed.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes they might be impossible, right? So based on your circumstances. So we want to just make sure that we don't have some sort of a rule on our self-worth, that we have to be able to create it through our outer actions. Our self-worth should come from the inside. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for pain.
Okay.
Right? It's kind of like lifting weights at the gym. If you lift with bad form, you get aches, pains, and you don't get results. If you hinge your self-worth to some of these outcome measures, you still might hit them, and the worst thing would be if you did hit them, because then you'd be reinforcing this method for living a human life, that you need to do more to be more. And if you believe you need to do more to be more, you are setting yourself up for pain, because there's a limit to that. And there's going to be times when you can't do more, even though you're putting in the best effort possible. So you need to remember your worth is your potential, your highest potential in you. Just as a sunflower seed has worth because it can turn into a sunflower, which is beautiful and brings joy and creates more sunflower seeds and spreads the goodness. So you need to be able to look at yourself like that, right? Now, here's a question. What, if anything, scares you about loving and accepting yourself as you are? And what I would say is, fill in the blanks. I refuse to have compassion for myself because if I do blank, what might somebody say to that?
Maybe some people are afraid that other people won't love them in that sense.
Yes, you are actually spot on.
Yeah.
People beat themselves up as a way to get love and attention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so they think it helps them, when it's actually destructive on many levels. There are better ways to get love and attention from people than indulging in all of these self-destructive thoughts and behaviors.
100%.
And one of the things is, I've always said that, the best way to get love is to give love. Reach out to somebody, send them a note, send them a message, say some great things about them and the potential within them, and watch what happens. It'll boomerang back to you. Just keep doing it. Test it out. Don't even take my word for it. But the best way to actually get love is not to beat yourself up and have other people run in and try to bandage you with soothing words and attention. The best way to do it is actually to give love first. That's the way it works best, right? But sometimes people still think it's a good idea to get love by creating a wound, because when they were a kid and you got a wound, people kissed it better.
Of course.
What's the message kids develop? When you want love, create a hurt, right? So then they keep repeating that cycle unconsciously. Some people think that self-criticism is a motivator, and if they don't do it, they'll be lazy. But self-criticism is only a short-term motivator. It can work. Short-term, it'll burn you out if you do it long-term, right? A greater motivator could be thinking about others and the people that you're going to help through what you're going to do. People are more motivated not to let each other down than they are to let themselves down. So they're more motivated to give for others. It's a very, heroic thing, right? So, for me, one of the things I had to do was I had to write an ebook for exercise therapy, and I couldn't stand the writing process. I'd have to sit down for 4 hours a day and write, and it was like pulling teeth for me. But I put a picture of one of the big group hugs that we end class with, and I hung it there beside my computer, and I looked at all the students, and I thought, I'm doing this for them. And I'm doing this for future students I'll be teaching. And so that's what I used as my motivation instead of criticizing myself. It was just like, I actually made it very tangible. Who am I doing this for? And it could be somebody in future you haven't even met. Right? So, sometimes people will think I don't deserve self-compassion. So that's why I refuse to give it to myself. And I said, well, you're not measuring your worth on your highest potential where you should be. I could say a sunflower seed isn't worth anything. It's just a little tiny seed. It's junk. But if you look at it and you judge the moment, arrogantly judge the moment, then you will create pain for yourself. You need to zoom out and see across space and time. Right?
Perspective right there.
Yeah. Other people will say, I need to put my kids first. I don't want to give myself compassion. I'm like, look, your kids are going to learn their habit of burning themselves out for everyone else. You're going to spread the disease to them. Okay. You will actually have more to give if you take more to recharge yourself, because all those thoughts that are negative towards yourself, they drain us. And then we have less to give to those we care about. Right. So I think here's what I would say. Here's a question. Instead of trying to love yourself, though, how can you be the self that loves?
I would say like greater understanding, with others. It's the same, like what you said already. Demonstrating that with others. And showing it by example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think too. It's everything makes sense. Any answer you give is going to be.
I don't know about that, Brendan, but yeah.
It's just my own lack of understanding that'll get in the way. But everything you say is going to make sense.
Should I try in French? I couldn't.
Yeah. I know cow and duck, and that's about it. I took like 12 years of French in school, but after that, you got me. It's all.
I hear that. I hear that.
Yeah, I think it's to stop judging, stop the attitude of judging, and start an attitude of accepting. How is this okay? How is this actually okay? Instead of, we always just keep trying to judge. It's such a hard, draining way to live. Why live that way? Nobody can be happy that way. And then why live to be unhappy? Right? If you just try to love everything and discipline yourself to love everything, life is just so much easier and so much more fun. And we talked today before we started the recording about how I had a critic. And the critic was like criticizing me on social media for something I said on my TikTok, right, account.
Yeah.
And then I reached out to them and I said, I love what you said. I thought it was awesome, because it was, and it was funny and it was so good. And I'm like, I'd like to dedicate a post to you. And then they were like, no way. And I did. And then they're like, you're the best. Oh my gosh. And then they went from criticizing me to posting that everyone should follow me. That's what they said on their account. They took a snapshot of my account and said, everybody should follow this guy. Right? Isn't that more fun than just saying, hey, you can't judge me, blah, blah, blah? I'm like, no, I'd actually love to make friends with this person, because I'm not coming at it with an attitude of judgment in that moment.
Right.
My first response was, what do I love about this person? I'm like, they're actually really funny. I know they're kind of directing some sort of criticism towards me or negative energy towards me, but what do I love about them? They're articulate. They're doing it to try to create value in their own way.
Yeah.
They're experimenting. They're trying to create value through looking clever for finding faults in others. Right? That's an experiment. But you know what? They could run that experiment and they'll find that it doesn't work as well. They're going to find that, you can find greater value in showing people the value in them. Right? Because now they're experiencing that through the way that I responded to them. I showed them their value and now they're just like, whoa, okay, I like that value better. So
zooming out.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really helps when people are struggling with compassion and stuff like that is to just, a really cool tool that I'll say is, I call it the ancient friend. Just imagine that, in those moments when you're being hard on yourself, just imagine you've got this imaginary friend and they're all wise, all loving, all compassionate. They know everything about you, even before this life started. They know everything that's going on in your life right now, and they know what's coming up for you in future. And from this perspective, and from the perspective that they are 10 out of 10 loving and 10 out of 10 wise, what would they tell you in this moment? And if you tune into that, that's usually what you need to hear most, right? Just use that ancient, all-wise, all-loving, imaginary friend and defer to them in your moments of confusion on yourself and everything else. Just anchor yourself back to that, and you will find what you're looking for.
Teamwork.
Absolutely. So I would say that, in addition to what we've talked about here today, this is kind of like a bit on self-acceptance and changing our ideas around self-acceptance. There are ways to reinforce these concepts further. This is kind of like step one on this. Step two could be to take some of the discussion points we've talked about and to journal and brainstorm new answers to them every day, because you're training your brain to find new perspectives around this and find answers to support this. We can add in some more, like, what do you like most about yourself? Right? Brainstorm around that every day.
Yeah.
So how can I be the self that loves instead of trying to love myself? Just drop the whole judgment piece, right? Like, it's just such an unhappy way to live, right? We could just brainstorm about all these different things so that we convince ourselves it's a good idea to have self-compassion. And self-compassion is not to be confused for laziness and not putting in an effort and just being like, I need to go easy on myself. That's sloth. So we don't want to swing the pendulum too far the other way, because it's actually not self-compassion if we just do these, if we just put in half-hearted efforts on everything and justify that we're just being kind and patient with ourselves. Like, that's actually doing ourselves an injustice. So I just need to be careful on that point. And then I think, to add to this, we may want to, be able to get some perspective on those aspects of ourselves that we may not be at peace with, and be able to add, maybe it was that we did this to somebody, or we did that to somebody, and or we have this quality, and we just want to be able to be like, how does this actually serve us in a way? Maybe you've got challenges with your anger and you resent yourself for it, but how does your anger serve you? Well, maybe it tells you what you're passionate about. Maybe it helps you get in touch with what you're desiring for your life. And maybe you don't know the best way yet, but you'll get there. And maybe it tells you that a value that you have has been violated. And maybe we can audit that value to see if it was realistic to begin with. So all of those kinds of parts of ourselves that we may resent can serve us. We just need to approach them with openness and curiosity. And then we also need to be able to discipline that harsh judgmental voice inside and beat it like beating a debate. Because there's going to be a voice that comes in out of nowhere and it's going to be like, you suck, you're stupid, blah, blah, blah. And we need to be able to challenge that voice and be like, what do you know? Like, so much of the stuff you say is wrong. Like, why would I trust you as my life coach inside my head? Like, you say so many things that are so false. Like, your success rate on any wisdom is like 1%, if that. Do you know the full story? Do you know the truth? So we need to be able to stand up to that bully inside. And we need to be able to take that battle seriously, because that bully will beat you down endlessly and anywhere, right? If we don't stand up to it. And then get clear on what we want to stand for in this life. You know, do you want to be somebody who asks themselves, how am I responsible, and takes extreme responsibility? Or do you want to be a human that is always finding out who can I blame or what can I blame? You know, do you want to be a victim or a warrior? Right? Like that's one thing there. You know, do you want to be proud and egotistical and always trying to look right? Or do you want to be somebody that's humble enough to keep learning and that is humble enough to apologize when they've done people wrong? What kind of person do you want to be? So we want to just get clear on all the different values that you actually want to represent and make sure that those are values that'll make you happy with who you're becoming. So that would be kind of like some extra pieces to add on to this. Okay. Key takeaways. What are your key takeaways from today's discussion?
I think something that would be like beneficial to remind myself of, or other people potentially, just one of the common themes that we kept talking about is just how we're not qualified. We're not qualified to judge ourselves.
Yeah, we don't know what's good for us. Right?
No.
We don't know what's good for us.
Yeah, I would think that would be one of the greater themes. And I think that could bring a lot of humility too. And then that could be like the icing on the cake. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, I think also that there are ways we can continue to focus our attention that will make us more self-accepting. Now, most people won't do this kind of a drill if they think it's for them. So whenever I teach this to somebody, and if you're teaching it to somebody else, I always pitch it as, you know, I need help with this. Can you help me edit and revise this coaching conversation? And that's how I started with you. And it's because that's the way I teach this. I teach it as a work in progress, because then people who have difficulty with self-acceptance will have difficulty even doing something like this, but they will do it for somebody else. So whenever I'm having a conversation on self-acceptance, I make it look like the person I'm doing it with is doing me a favor.
Of course.
And so I used to have a handout that I would walk people through, and it said, rough draft, please help me edit. And it said it at the top, but that was my good draft. And I intentionally put in spelling mistakes and grammatical errors so that they had things they could critique me on.
Yep.
And I would walk people through it, and I would give it to them, and they would bring it back to me edited. And they would always say something like, I really got a lot out of that. Like, you know, surprisingly, like there were a lot of things that really made me think, you know? And so that was kind of like a little bit of a, you know, Trojan horse approach to get through to people who have difficulty with the, you know, feeling their worth, is that you just kind of go around it in that way there. You know, there was another technique I thought that was really kind of cool when it comes to self-acceptance. And it's kind of like, you know, imagine yourself as a baby. You know, the baby looks up at you with like big, beautiful eyes. It'd be like baby Monica looking up at you, you know, and imagine that, like, and just sending love and energy into the baby version of yourself, you know, cradling it with love and kindness. And then, you know, just imagine taking that baby version of you and just placing it inside and just knowing it's in there. It's innocent. You wouldn't hate and judge a baby. It's just trying to figure things out. It's in a world from I don't know, and you're still like that. You need to just be able to love yourself like loving that baby version of yourself, because you're a work in progress. You're still just a seed of what you can become. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you've grown into your potential yet. You are very far from it. We all are. Yeah. We are still just at baby levels of our potential, and we need to, you know, and so I've got some people, I got this from the book, The Dark Side of Light Chasers. Just hang up like a baby picture of yourself. Just love that baby inside you, because that baby is still inside you.
Right.
And that's a good way to remind yourself to be patient with yourself. Remind yourself that you are still a work in progress, still figuring it out. Right?
Yeah.
So I remember that because I remember doing that with people when I had the handout, and it was very effective. So I almost forgot to do that. All right. I thought you were a 10 out of 10 on today's call. I thought these three were 10 out of 10.
They're so cute. Goodness, they're so adorable. Did you name them?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Not on a
Name suggestions in the comments. We need name suggestions for these. Throw your name suggestions in the comments.
Perfect.
All right. And
Thank you
I
so much.
think that one of the best things we can do is I always try to see the highest goodness in other human beings. So when I'm talking to people and relating to them, people can sense that I think that I'm not judging them, that I'm looking at them and I'm seeing their highest potential, even if they don't see it. That I'm looking at you and I'm like, you've done more goodness in your life than you can ever remember. You have more potential than you even know, right? And you're the one thing is that you're just making the mistake of thinking you're qualified to judge this stuff, right? Like you're not, like you have no idea what your value and worth is. And no matter what you say or do, you will always have value and worth to me and to others, right? So we need to break out of the false judgment. It's a false judgment and it creates a spell of suffering. And we need to be able to break out of that spell of suffering. So I encourage, just as practice, try to see other people in this perspective, because then if you practice doing it for others and seeing their highest potential and imagining it, it becomes easier to do it for ourselves. And then just reinforce these concepts in some way, shape, or form until it becomes a part of you and it becomes internalized. So it does take some work, right? All right. And teach it to other people. That's a good way to learn it best. Let's do, and then redo the test we did at the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe like 6 weeks down the road, I would redo those questions and score them.
Okay. That's awesome.
Okay, let's do go team on 3, and then we're out.
I'm ready.
All right.
Dubs you in.
All right. 1, 2, 3, go team.
Go team. Thank you.
Yeah.